So, anytime this content creator drops something, I'm there on it like white on rice. So, without further ado, let's listen to the man, the myth, the legend.
Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video, what we are going to do is look at a case that is extremely terrifying. It's still ongoing, and it happened in the city of Moscow, Idaho, on the 13th of November, 2022. Exactly 1 month ago as I'm posting this video, and it's extremely frightening because it's like something, straight out of a horror movie, a slasher movie. And then what's even more frightening is that, as far as, we know, there are no clues, no evidence, and no suspects. So yeah, strap yourselves in. As I said, this is ongoing, so I'll take you through it all to date. And we will look at some speculation and rumors. Gotta put the emphasis on speculations and rumors, by the way, folks, because, if you read the message boards around this case, those trains are wild. Everything about this one is wild. So, let's give it a go. So let's get into the background of the area before we get into the events themselves. And that is the city of Moscow, northern Idaho, right along the border with the state of Washington. It's just south of Coeur d'Alene, which is, a place we've been to for a story before. And Moscow is quite a safe, it's a college town and it's very safe. The last murder to occur there occurred in 2015. So 7 years ago. And then this story happened. Moscow is known as the heart of the arts due to the various festivals that take place there throughout the year. No doubt championed also by the University of Idaho, situated on the west side of town. The population of Moscow is rather small, only 25,000 people. Those fine folk are joined by 10,000 students who attend the University of Idaho, the largest university in this state, making Moscow a college town, home of the Vandals. And also home to 4 students who were attending the University of Idaho in November 2022. Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle. Maddie Mogen was 21 years of age, from Coeur d'Alene. She was born in May 2001 in Eugene, Oregon, growing up in Idaho. She was known as very funny, a hard worker, and was excited to be attending the University of Idaho. There she would make the dean's list, which is, getting academically recognized by the big dogs. She would make the dean's list every semester. She had been dating a fellow student named Jake for almost a year as 2022 closed out, and she was excited to be soon graduating with her degree in marketing. Kaylee Goncalves was also 21 years of age, from Rathdrum, Idaho. Really, again, part of the greater Coeur d'Alene area. She was born in Concord, California, the middle of 5 children. Much like Madison, her family moved to Idaho when she was still quite young, and it was actually in middle school that her and Madison began a lifelong friendship. They were inseparable even as they both transitioned to university life, going to the same university together and living in the same house. She was athletic, she was social, and she loved adventure. She was studying to become an elementary school teacher. Ethan Chapin was 20 years of age, of Conway, Washington. Ethan was in fact a triplet, 2 boys and a girl, and he was very close with his siblings. They would play basketball together, soccer, they would run cross country, and in fact, all 3 of them would go to the University of Idaho. Ethan himself was majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism management, and he was in a relationship with, finally, Xana Kernodle. Xana was 20 years of age, of Post Falls, Idaho. Born and raised in that area, she was a talented gymnast as a child, and later became a talented volleyball, track, and soccer player. She was dearly beloved, and majoring in marketing at the University of Idaho, and was a member of the Pi Beta Phi sorority with Madison, and in fact they worked together part-time at a local Greek restaurant. And so that's how they all kind of came to know each other. Maddie and Kaylee, they were, best friends since childhood. Xana and Maddie, they were in the same sorority together and they worked together. And Xana and Ethan were in a relationship.
God, it smells like dirty dick in here. Murphy, you've been a bad boy.
Did anybody do their chores today? Fuck, I'm just gonna do it. Anna, where are you going?
Yeah, I gotta go pull you. I fucking failed 2 of them already.
So as you can see, all 4 victims, they came from roughly the same kind of general area, and they all had a pretty kind of similar background. And all 4 were murdered in the same house in the early morning hours of November the 13th, 2022.
You know what? It looks real sad because you could see how tight their friendship, their bond was. And it's just amazing. Like I always bring it up, and I know it's a lot of overthinking, but every single little decision we make can lead to something catastrophic, can lead just to everyday normal life things, can lead to extreme prosperity. I mean, you just never know. And it all comes down to just that one decision. We caught a red light, therefore we didn't get plowed into by the semi truck that lost its brakes, or we crossed that red light and just happened to be plowed over by a semi that lost its brakes. I mean, so many little things like that I do take in consideration. It's like, it's way overthinking. It's way too, like I said, it sounds ridiculous, but whatever decision that they made to draw attention to themselves unknowingly, because it doesn't sound, I mean, they seem too humble, too content. They're funny and they have their own little clique, their own little group. They didn't do anything, as far as I can tell at this point, to draw attention to themselves, other than being, they were, beautiful young ladies. But that doesn't mean because, they're pretty that, some sick fuck needs to act out some deranged plan in his head. But it just sucks because there's a lot of stupid mother effers out there that, have a screw loose. And gosh, I wish, that wasn't a part of society, but it's sickening that it is.
Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana all lived together at 1122 King Road, located on the hilly, southwesterly side of Moscow. It was a large house, 3 stories, 6-bed, 3-bath. Now, one thing that is super important to know about the house they were living in is that it was on a hill, as you can see. So you can enter from the front door, which is on the first floor, the ground floor, or you can enter from a sliding door on the second floor at the back of the house. So Maddie, Kaylee, and Xana lived together along with 2 other students, Dylan and Bethany. It's believed a 6th student had also lived there along with those 5. Their name was still on the lease, but by November 13th, they had already moved out. So on November the 13th, there was those 5 people: Xana, Kaylee, Maddie, Bethany, and Dylan, along with Ethan, who, as Xana's boyfriend, presumably he would stay over often enough. There was also the dog Murphy in the house too. Bethany and Dylan, their bedroom was on the first floor, then Ethan and Xana on the second floor, and then Maddie and Kaylee on the third floor. Xana, Ethan, Maddie, and Kaylee were all murdered in that house on the 13th of November. Bethany and Dylan, who were asleep on the first floor, said they did not hear a thing. So now let's get into what we know about the events of that day and that weekend. On Saturday, the 12th of November, the victims weren't all hanging around together that evening, but this picture was taken that day. It's kind of eerie, actually, because it shows everyone all together. Posted by Kaylee, the caption reads, "One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. Heart." The night of, Ethan and Xana were at a fraternity party just a couple of minutes away, arriving there at approximately 8 p.m. In the meantime, at around 10 p.m, Kaylee and Maddie were picked up from their home and went to the Corner Club, a sports bar in downtown Moscow. So the night went on, all were having, a grand old time. Apparently we haven't heard anything bad that happened. Now, by 1 a.m, Bethany and Dylan, the two other roommates, they had returned home to that house on King Road. They themselves had been out that night, separately, not together. But by 1 a.m, they were home. Ethan and Xana were home then by 1:45 a.m. Kaylee and Maddie left the Corner Club at 1:30 a.m. and were then seen on a Twitch live stream, of all things if you can believe that, by a grub truck parked a couple of minutes away. They regularly live streamed their business, I guess, and both Kaylee and Maddie could be seen.
Have a good night. Bye. Hello. Hi. Welcome back. No, it's amusing though. It's fun to watch other people dance. Yeah. Have a good night. Bye. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Hi. Please, I would like the carbonara.
Okay.
I feel bad. But if I have a free grub truck on my app.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is, well, actually.
Now, a hell of a lot has been made about this stream, for obvious reasons, right? Namely, the one being it's the last time any of them were seen on camera alive.
That's fine. What can I get for you?
Also, there's this kind of strange guy on it. This guy in the hoodie. A lot has been made about him too. Namely because of how he acts, especially when you consider what happened just a couple of hours later. Weird.
The carbonara. But if I have a free grub truck on my app.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is.
He's dressed, covering himself up. It appeared he had been walking with them, but then he's just standing there not talking to anyone. It looks like he's staring at Kaylee and Maddie. And then he walks right up and stands beside him.
It's one, but they're like 6 to 7 ounce stocks.
So did they know him? And if they did, why did they just ignore him? Was he some kind of weirdo? What's the deal? I mean, probably it's just the usual kind of shit women have to put up with drunk guys and that kind of stuff. But again, when you factor in what's about to happen... Anyways, the hooded guy was talking to the bearded guy. Apparently, the bearded guy told the police later, this hoodie guy, he seemed nice, and maybe he just wanted to make sure the two girls got home safe. And after Kaylee and Maddie got into a car, one of them had called an Uber or something like that, the bearded guy points and said they're leaving. Allegedly, the hooded guy said, "What the fuck?" And then he took off, absolutely booking it. I mean, it just is super odd to me that if he was trying to, make sure they got home safe, how they never interacted with him, like once over the course of the 10 minutes of this footage. Whether they knew him or not, from what we can see, it seems they didn't say word one. Now, I do have to be crystal clear here, the police do not consider this guy to be a suspect, and as you can imagine, that footage has been ripped apart by all the internet sleuths online, examining each and every pixel, I'm sure at this stage, looking through with different filters, trying to see if there's invisible people in the footage too. And so then, at 1:55 a.m, Kaylee and Maddie arrived back to that house at 1122 King Road. Between 2:26 a.m. and 2:44 a.m, Kaylee called a fella named Jack, a person she had previously dated, and Jack had been Kaylee's prom date. 6 times. Then, from 2:44 a.m. to 2:52 a.m, Maddie called him 3 times. Now, Kaylee and Maddie, as I said, they're best friends since middle school, and their bedrooms were right next to each other, and it's actually believed that that night they were in the same bed. They were both in Maddie's bed. So Kaylee, maybe she had a couple of beers or whatever, she was trying to talk to an old boyfriend named Jack, as you can get after a couple of drinks, and he wasn't picking up. Then maybe she thought, well, maybe, he's not answering for me, get Maddie to call him. He didn't pick up for her either. And then at 2:52 a.m., Kaylee called him one last time. And then that was it. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. that dark November night, a figure approached that house, slowly slid open the back door, going into that dark and quiet house.
Maybe because I've grown up in the city my whole entire life, I don't get it why some of these neighborhoods just leave their shit open, just leave their doors open. I mean, they'll put up, security cameras, but they'll leave their door unlocked. I mean, that doesn't make much sense to me. I mean, if you're going to be freaking putting up security cameras, why not just start off by locking your doors? Making sure the windows are locked. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of weird to me.
Armed with an extremely sharp and deadly weapon, and savagely murdered Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana. The coroner would say they had likely all been asleep when it happened or when it started, because some did have defensive wounds. All were stabbed to death with a large knife, possibly one quite like this, and there were no signs of sexual assault. And the 2 roommates, Dylan and Bethany, who had been home before anyone else, who were on the first floor asleep, they never heard a peep while there was absolute carnage going on the 2 floors right above them. Then, at around midday on the 13th of November, Bethany and Dylan, they woke up. They found Xana and Ethan on the 2nd floor. They found Kaylee and Maddie on the 3rd floor. They as you can imagine, they absolutely freaked out. One of them even fainted. They called their friends first because, as you can imagine, what's going through their head, and then the police arrived.
Don't know how this happened or anything else at this time. Moscow police say they responded to the area around noon Sunday after they had reports that someone was unconscious. When officers arrived, they found the 4 victims dead. The circumstances at this point are unknown. All we knew for several hours was that there was a homicide investigation here, and that was through a vandal alert, a notification sent by U of I to students around 2 asking them to shelter in place. Washington State sent a similar alert to its students a few miles west in Pullman, minus the shelter in place, saying there wasn't a threat to the WSU community. U of I lifted their shelter in place just before 4 p.m., about 2 hours after their first alert, saying Moscow police didn't believe there to be an active threat to the community. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered with this happening in a neighborhood that's predominantly made up of U of I students. Investigators on scene say they're in for a long night.
This picture has become pretty well known. It's of blood literally leaking out of the house on the 2nd floor. It was graphic.
That's sad.
Alerts went out and the investigation began. The investigation that, to date, at least, is still ongoing.
Well, there was a lot of blood. It's a very sad scene.
Mabbitt adds that she does not believe the toxicology report on each of the 4 University of Idaho students will be relevant to the manner or cause of death. Now, Mabbitt has been the county coroner for 16 years in Latah County. She says in that time there have been at least 2 other multiple homicide scenes that she's been involved in. But she says this current homicide investigation is the only one she's been to where there are 4 people at one scene.
It's been said this was a targeted event. One of the victims, or more than one of the victims, was the aim of whoever came into the house and savagely murdered them. It wasn't random. Kaylee's father would later insinuate in an interview that either Maddie or Kaylee may have been the target, that their injuries were worse, that they were killed differently. The why we still don't know, and the investigation, that followed has released very, very little, and it's been absolutely chock-a-block of mixed messages. First, they said there is a danger to the community.
Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there's no threat to the community, and as we have stated, please stay vigilant, report any suspicious activity, and be aware of your surroundings at all times.
Then they would walk that back and say there isn't a danger to the community. They would say they'd all been found in their beds, and then they would say they weren't found in their beds, but in their bedroom. Like, the messages from the investigation has been very confusing. In the first few days, there were over 600 tips, 90 interviews, a good few. The family members of the victims, God love them, have come out with information too, saying, this is what the police told them. Now, that's actually become a major factor in this. I think it's frustration on the family's side, frustration at the slow progress of the investigation, because no suspects have been announced, no motives have been announced, no evidence, no leads as to who came in and did this. The police have said pretty much absolutely nothing. No messages left behind, no squat. And that's the most terrible.
I wouldn't have to be the type of person to, tell Mike here why the police aren't sharing anything. I think a lot of the times, just the way some of these pedophile hunting groups go about their business of, calling out people in public, trying to shame them more than get the cops involved, ruins a case. The same thing goes with releasing too much information at once. So when they catch a guy, he might slip up and say something that only the killer would know. And so I think when people clamor too much for, the information, we want to know how much information, that you could possibly give us, it's just going to muddy the waters, and it's going to make it even more difficult for them to find a person of interest that fits the MO of the crimes. And I think, for the most part, we all need to just, we live in an age of information where everything's just set out, hey Siri or hey Alexa or hey Google or whatever, just a question away. So, yeah, I'm glad that the police still do that.
Terrifying thing about this, completely. There, like, a lot of what I'm going to be saying from here on is speculation and theories. As I said, the police have released almost nothing at all, but some serial killer, I think they're a serial killer now, came into a house full of 6 people in the middle of the night and murdered 4 of them as they were sleeping with a big-ass knife. A knife that looks like it's directly from Scream. Now, of course, one of the first things people always ask is why or how did the 2 who were sleeping, Bethany and Dylan, they were sleeping on the first floor, how did they not hear anything, that night? There must have been, screams or something. Like, some of the victims had defensive wounds, so they had tried to fight. You can imagine that there was 4 victims in 2 beds, so one of them attacked the other one could, There must have been some kind of struggles. How did nobody hear nothing? Well, one thing is that it was in the middle of the night. Maybe they were deep sleepers, and one fella, a guy named Ryan, he spoke to Fox News saying he had actually lived in that house way before, and his bedroom had been on the first floor. And he would say, quote, unless his roommate was playing the television loudly on the second floor, he typically heard nothing from the second and third floors. So I guess they have tick floors. It's a well-built house. By the way, the dog, Murphy the dog, he was in the house at the time of the murders, but he was kept in a separate room, so nothing there. The dog might, probably wouldn't have been barking, wouldn't even have been aware, maybe. Now, judging from the fact that both Bethany and Dylan survived, and they were both on the first floor, we can kind of guess, that the killer entered the house through the sliding door that was on the second floor at the back of the house. Entered there, killed the 2 on that floor, Xana and Ethan, went upstairs, went after Kaylee and Maddie, and then left without going to the first floor. Although, quick note, a neighbor would also say to the news that he was taking his dog for a walk at 8 a.m. the morning of the 13th of November, and he saw the front door of the house was wide open. So maybe the killer did go down to the first floor and open the door and walk straight out. Again, this is just theories, the police have not released anything official. Important to note, though, is that there was no sign of forced entry into the house. And also, at the back of the house, it leads into kind of a wooded area. So if you wanted to approach the house in the middle of the night and you didn't want to be seen by passers-by, the back of the house would be the way to go. And that would make sense if either Maddie or Kaylee were the intended target. The killer went straight to the second floor, walked into Ethan and Xana's room by accident, and then went upstairs. And remember, as I said at the top, only 25,000 people live in the city. So whoever did this, if they were local and possibly were, well then they are still in the eye of the storm. And it probably was, I mean, the chances of it being someone local are likely, someone who would know the area. And they're still there. They enjoyed their Thanksgiving dinner just a couple of weeks ago, relishing seeing everything that's going on around them. That's one of the most terrifying things of all. Perhaps the killer was someone who had been to the house previously for one reason or another.
A former tenant posted this photo and says all 6 bedrooms had combination locks.
It's believed the students had a lock on their door similar to this. This is a keypad lock.
You press the code that was pre-programmed in, push down on the lever handle, open the door, and then close the door behind you. And it should be locked.
But this was a party house. Many may have known the combinations.
Meet you at the house, let yourself in. Kids do that all the time.
Here's a TikTok posted by Kaylee, filmed in the house. It could in fact give you, or the killer, a good idea of the layout. But I mean, you could also find the floor plan online easy enough. Now, the police have set up their own website, set up specifically for this case. And on it, they say they have cleared the 2 surviving roommates, the hoodie guy, the driver who took Maddie and Kaylee home that night, Jack, the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee's, who she had been trying to call that very night, and maybe as it happened, and anyone who had called over the next morning when the roommates called friends before the police. They also cleared the roommate who was still on the lease but had moved out. And I mean, a few other things happened recently in Moscow that are kind of weird. Like just a couple of weeks before, in October, and a dog, an Australian Shepherd, was found in Moscow, skinned from head to toe. Nobody knows who did it, which is like a serial killer thingy to do.
When it comes to dogs, let me just say, they have an extremely special place in my heart. You know, I had seen this meme once, and it says, you know, they're a small part of your life, but their entire life is based on you. And it is so true. And I hate to think what my dog felt when he didn't see me any longer. I mean, I don't want to cry, but I know for a fact, you know, I never wanted him to feel like I abandoned him. It was just, that's why I call my ex so many bad names. And you know, I'm sorry, ladies, if it offends you, me saying, you know, these negative, derogatory things about, you know, her, which may sound sexist, but that's not it at all. That's only directed towards her because of the type of person, type of character she has. Everything is just foul and rotten to the core. And I used to hate beyond all measures that we would be sitting down to eat, you know, dinner, and he's drooling. And he rarely drooled. You could see drool coming down his mouth. And she's like, no, he has to wait till we're done. And I'm like, he's hungry. Feed him. I mean, I have a picture of him up online. You could see his body's like that of a, you know, a show dog. His 2 parents, their lineage, it was the best female. It was the alpha female and the alpha male. And yeah, he came out to be just absolutely, you know, a gorgeous, beautiful dog. But he was smart as hell. And, you know, he could be in the middle of eating and we would just need to be like, stop. And he would stop immediately. You know, he just listened and obeyed so well. But if there was just that one time he wanted to be a dog for a little bit, my ex would go and slap him on the nose. And I used to get so fucking pissed. I'm like, don't do that, please. And the more and more I would ask, for her not to do something, she was like a little kid, the more and more she did. So fucking sicko. If he had anything to do with, these, young individuals and the dog, I hope he fucking rots.
Also, questions were raised about if this attack could be linked to two other separate attacks. One was in 1999, where two Washington State University students in the city of Pullman, Washington, were both stabbed as they slept. They survived, but it remains unsolved. Another attack occurred in August of 2021 in Salem, Oregon. A couple were attacked by a masked intruder as they slept, attacked with a knife. One of them was killed, and it also remains unsolved. Police would come out and say the dog incident or those two other attacks in the middle of the night, people attacking with knives, all unrelated to what happened on King Road. Now, there is the theory that the killer was aiming for one person, that they went into the wrong room, or, somebody heard something and there was some kind of scuffle. And one thing is that Kaylee reportedly mentioned that she had a stalker in the weeks leading up to what happened. Now, she did have an incident at work. When she was leaving work one day, a guy had tried to follow her to her car. That guy was actually found. The police found him, and again, he was released, with nothing there. But I mean, again, they've interviewed a lot of people, well over 90 at this point. How many times have we seen cases where the police interviewed somebody, let them go, and it turned out they were the guy? But regarding the stalking, the police said they don't have any other evidence regarding it, but if anybody knows something, pass it on. And one thing that is really friggin' weird, you guys, is that just a couple hundred feet away, in the early hours of November the 13th at 3 a.m., so probably exactly as the time the killer was in the house on King Road killing, the police were just in the field right next to it.
Oh my god.
Hey guys, Moscow PD. Come over here, talk to me. Moscow PD. Hey, is that beer?
What's up?
Is that beer in your hand?
Yeah, I'm 21.
You got the ID on you?
I don't.
Okay.
I'll take it back to my apartment if you need.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Huh? No, they just took off. I told them to stop, but I'm not going to push it.
Hey, Moscow, please.
Yeah, you got your ID on you?
I don't.
Okay. I'm going to grab your info just because you got beer and you're walking around with it.
No, it's closed. But
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I live like right there. I'll take it back if you need.
No, we're just doing alcohol enforcement and running around with beer across the street.
No worries. Sorry about that.
You're good. Are these your boys?
No, I don't know them.
Okay. You guys taking off on me?
I didn't hear you. Yeah, we thought you were talking.
You all three turned around and I pointed my flashlight. You said, hey, come here. You guys all turned around and walked away.
I thought it was just like a fake person, honestly. Yeah, like
How many fake people are out here that you've experienced?
Something trying to fuck us.
Okay, that's fair.
They were called to a nearby field. There was some drunk bullshit call. Kids were drinking in a field, something like that. And the house on King Road could be seen in the background of the body cam. Perhaps the killer was inside doing their business during this footage. The killer's car could have been right there. What's even more crazy is that this is literally a couple of 100 yards from the crime scene, and there are a lot of people around at 3 a.m. The three kids drinking, the cops, this other guy, and then check this out. You can see 4 people running away in the distance. Now, probably just kids running from cops. Now, after all, this is a college town, and it's also a Saturday night with lots of events happening that weekend. So the fact that there would be a lot of people out and about isn't weird in itself, but it is odd how active this area is while a mass murderer was mass murdering right there, and no one saw anything. That's incredibly creepy.
Seems to be a pretty slow weekend. I was expecting it to be busier with
I'm pretty sure it's
the football game and Saturday. Like I was expecting busy, but this seems slow.
yeah. It was weird.
Yeah.
People are inside because it was
Oh, fucking cool, yeah.
Now, with all of this, and allegedly Xana, she fought back, you'd think there'd be some evidence, fingerprints, DNA, something the killer would have left behind. It seems that he probably did. He likely did. The police have kind of all but confirmed it, but it's not popping up on any database or anything like that. So, not a convicted felon, or hasn't been put into a police database anyway. The one thing I guess they could do would be a dragnet, DNA dragnet of everybody living in the area, but that itself can have a lot of issues too. But man, whoever did this is one sick individual. I mean, a serial killer. This is honestly, guys, one of the most terrifying stories I've covered. This reminds me of Danny Rawling, the Scream killer who was on the campus in Florida. It seems like something directly out of Scream. Whoever did this likely had been preparing a predator. They probably would have been in there for a while, and going into a house that had 6 people in it and doing what they did, I mean, that takes a lot of evil. Finally, the most recent thing released by the Moscow PD is that they are looking for the occupants of a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. I'm guessing it may have been seen in the area at the time, possibly even seen in that body cam. But, to sum up, 4 bright young students were viciously murdered by someone in the middle of the night in their quiet, safe house in their safe college town. Likely by a man, as a knife was used, a weapon that tends to be used for personal and intimate reasons, but in this likely by some serial killer. The police have said they have no suspects, no motive, no murder weapon. So, no clue. There were no drugs involved in this case. The police have said it could have been a targeted attack, either a person inside, which matches up with what others said, that some of the victims had more horrendous injuries than others, or somebody just targeting the house itself, killing whoever they found inside. So they can't rule out a random attack either. And most recently, they've asked the public to stay vigilant and travel in groups. Possibly afraid it could happen again. Though, travel in groups, that is something the killer is evidently not afraid of. And so that about wraps up this old case, this new case. Wraps it up here to currently where we are right now, which is mid-December, 1 month later. Unfortunately, that month has been, you know, very slow. Nothing. I think that's the most worrying thing about this case, is that the investigation doesn't seem to be going anywhere. This is honestly one of the most horrific acts I've covered. Scary as all hell. And you can imagine people living in Moscow must be shitting their pants. I would be. And there's just nothing. Just nothing. You think in this day and age, you know, there'd be something. But the police haven't said anything, and if they do have something, it's very slow going with what they have. Terrifying case, really. Hopefully they will catch whoever did this real soon. If you know anything, have seen anything, be sure to contact the Moscow Police Department. And that'll do for now. Definitely want to keep an eye out there, folks. Yeah. So here, listen, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. And yeah, I guess, you know, always you can check out Twitter, you can check out Instagram, check out Patreon, but let's just leave it there for now, because goddamn, I think I'm gonna have nightmares after this one. But you know what, you will see me as always real soon in the next one, which will be next week, so look forward to that. But until then, please take care of each other, take care of yourselves, because I love you. Mike out.
Telling you, my absolute favorite content creator. Like, make sure to subscribe if you've never heard of him before, or if this is your first time on my page listening to him react. I mean, he does such a wonderful job. Witty where he needs to be, you know, serious where he needs to be. I mean, he knows how to make true crime entertaining rather than the same old, you know, monotone. Like, if you go back to some of his earlier videos, that's what he sounds like, just this monotone. He hadn't quite found his niche yet, if you know what I mean. And as he continued to go along and progress, he is now, you know, what he does now, which is just, you know, bravo. I absolutely love it. A girl that I was dating a year or so ago had asked if I knew of any good channels, and you know, I would tell her, like a lot of guys have said before, whenever I would go to her house, I'd hear her watching him. I'm like, oh, you're watching your little Irish boyfriend again, huh? So, I mean, he's cool. He just seems like a cool guy that you'd want to hang out with. But more than anything, subscribe to him, like his videos. I mean, this 1.78 is atrocious. It needs to be 4, 5, 6 million easily. So, I'm going to start a petition online through YouTube by saying, let's get him a shitload of subscribers. Come on, guys. We could do it. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This pretty just jacked up, what happened to these young kids. And as a father, I know she's far, far away, from getting into college and all that. She's only going to be 8 this January. But it scares me every single day to think, that there's some sick fucks out there that want to harm children, that want to harm, anybody. And for what? I mean, I don't understand it. But anyways, I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely evening. I got started real late and have a ton of work that I have to do. But thank you guys for watching, as always. I really, really do appreciate it. I'll leave my my social information on the bottom if you want to contact me that way. It seems like I have more new subscribers than my subscribers returning. If this is your first time on my page, it'll go a long way if you like and subscribe. I recently am trying to get in the habit of saying that. Somebody advised me, try to say that more often. So that's what I'm doing, because I wouldn't, it still feels weird saying it, but, if you like it, by all means, that would be great. But yeah, until next time, I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful day tomorrow. Stay safe. And until then, peace. I'll see you guys back here real soon.